DeMar DeRozan went from being one of the worst offseason signings by some people's reports to an MVP candidate. DeMar, who is a five-time All-Star, was moved in a sign and trade from the San Antonio Spurs to the Chicago Bulls. He was then signed for a 3-year, $82 million deal. This deal was under much acclaim, good and bad, graded by a quote from the Bleacher Report as the worst offseason signing. He was number one in the ranking for top 10 worst signings. Numerous other people reported that he was a terrible signing, but that is the one that was most commonly reported, the one that has been screenshotted the most by everyone, just as like evidence that no one believed what has occurred since. So DeMar, who played for the Raptors for I think 8 or 9 years, and then the Spurs for 3 years, is now a Chicago Bull, has found a way to completely reinvigorate his entire career somehow, even though he was a very top-tier player for the Raptors and played very good for the Spurs. I mean, he was an Olympian, an All-Star, the 360 dunk attempt. I mean, an all-team, first team. DeMar has always been a very great player, but for some reason this past year, everyone just thought he was going to just fall off the face of the earth. And as we're going to be talking about here in just a second, he has found a way to be arguably better than he has ever been before. So, if this is your first time viewing my channel, my name is John. This is the Sports Advocate. Thank you for tuning in. Go ahead and subscribe if you like this video. Give me a like, dislike, and go ahead in the comments down below. Just give me your opinion on this, if you thought DeMar was going to be able to do what he has done, and also some opinions on my channel and this video, what you think I could do better, things of that nature. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into this. We're going to start with the stats this year, and then we're going to move to some of his records, and then we're going to talk about his best years, his worst years, and what I would argue the primary reason for why he's able to do what he's doing this year, because there is actually a good reason for it, and I've actually done quite a bit of research to come up with this reason and a lot of good stats. So it's not just like emotional, there's stats behind it. So let's get into it. Stats this year: he has 28 points per game, which is 6th in the league and his best in his entire career at 32 years old. I think he might be 33 at this point. He's also shooting 50.5% field goal, which is 2nd in his entire career, and 35.8% from 3, which is the best in his entire career. DeMar has never really been known as a great three-point shooter, and this year he somehow found a way, even though he's not shooting a lot of threes, to consistently make them. I mean, he had 2 back-to-back game winners on December 31st and January 1st, and I mean, he's finding a way to be a very consistent three-point shooter. If you aren't huge into basketball or anything of that nature, good shooting splits is normally 50 whole field goal, 40 three-pointer, and 90 for free throws. And as you can see, he's 50 from field goals, above 50 from field goals, just below 40 for three-pointers. And I'm not sure what his free throw, but I'm sure it's right at 90, maybe give or take a couple. But so he's shooting very good overall. And like I said, this is highest points per game in his entire career. And that's, I mean, 28, no matter who it's from, 28 points per game is very good. I mean, even if you're looking at Giannis, I mean, 28 is not great. I mean, I think he's tied right now for number one in the league points per game. But nonetheless, 28 points is very, very good. I mean, he's 6th. He's top 10, almost top 5 in the entire league. You can't complain about that, especially for what everyone thought he was going to be. So he has 27, 30 or more points, like games with 30 or more points, 27 of them this year. He has 4 with 40 or more, and he has 1, which just happened a couple days back, with 50 or more against the Clippers. And a lot of this comes from his mid-range. If you didn't know, he's rated as one of the best mid-rangers, if not the best mid-range shooters in the entire league. If you haven't watched any of his stuff, maybe go watch that 50-pointer that he just had against the Clippers, and you'll see his mid-range ability is very high, very, very high. He's always having clutch shots in the mid-range. And talking about clutch, I mean, he's 604 fourth-quarter points number one in the league this year. 604. He's averaging about 8 on 50% shooting or more in the fourth quarter, and I think he's the only person since like the 70s or something to do that, to average 8 and 50% shooting in the fourth. So can't complain about that. And I will say this video is likely to come out after the Heat game, which is happening tonight. So some of these statistics might be slightly different, just a little bit, but it's not huge. It's not going to change anything anyways. But and I mean, he's called the fourth quarter king, and I think he's done it for good reason. Sorry if you guys hear my cat, he's going crazy over here, but he's the best arguably this year in the fourth quarter, and he's consistently doing it day in and day out. So now since we just talked about him being number one in the league, let's talk about some of the records that he's broke this year. And he's actually broke quite a few, surprisingly. Not surprisingly, I guess, if you've been watching. But, he's second all-time for Chicago Bulls in 35-plus streak. 35 points in a game streak. He has 8. Number 1 is Michael Jordan with 10. And number 3 is Michael Jordan with 7. So DeMar DeRozan is in very good company. Obviously, whether Michael Jordan's the GOAT or not for you is irrelevant, because Michael Jordan is very clearly a top 5, top 3 all time. So for DeMar DeRozan to be right there is very good news for him. And also, DeMar DeRozan is the only player ever to have 35 points or more on 50% shooting in 8 straight. The next best was Wilt Chamberlain with 7 straight, I want to say. So he has one more on 35 or more with 50% shooting throughout the whole game, which is the major reason right there, is the 50% shooting. That's why the 8 straight is the record, because if it was just 35 or more, the record would be higher. But the 50% shooting is the reason why, and that's very good. I mean, you're number one record all time in the entire league's history. So, I mean, you cannot complain about that. So now I want to talk about his best years and his worst years, and then we're going to be talking about why, like what the reason is. And I will say I have a note thingy right here. So these are my stats. So if I look down at this at some point, that's what I'm looking at. But I did there's a whole little graph thing up there, and that's what I'll be leaning on for my reasoning why. But first off, let's get to his best years. His best year, obviously, this year was Chicago Bulls, 2021-22 season with 28 points per game. His next best, he had 27.3 points per game in the 2016-2017 season. So just a little bit off, but even 1 point per game, if you looked at like the standings right now, that could drop you all to like 15th in the league for scoring. So 1 point is actually a pretty big difference. And his third best year in his entire career is 23.5 in the 2015-2016 season. So a pretty big drop off from year 2 to year 3, about 5 points. So DeMar averaging 28 this season. Yes, he averaged 27.3 one time, but it not only is it his best in his career, but compared to like his normal average throughout his entire career, it's a very, very big difference. So what DeMar is able to do this year is immensely respectable, and he's obviously clearly very, very talented still at this older age, and doing a great job proving everyone wrong. So we're going to skip over like his middle years. Like with the Spurs, he averaged like the middle of his points per game. There's a couple years with the Raptors. We're also going to cut out his rookie year, because everyone averages their worst points per game in the rookie year most of the time, outside of some stray, like I'm sure LeBron averaged an insane amount in his rookie year and things of that nature. So there's outliers, but DeMar averaged like 8 in his rookie year, so we're not going to talk about it just because it's his rookie year. So obviously his lowest points per game are going to be in his early years, his sophomore year, his junior year, things like that. So I did his sophomore year and his junior year just so it's out there, and then I did skip 1 year just so that it wasn't all really early in his year, and then I ended up doing one later for his worst years just to compare. So 2011-2012, he averaged 16.7, which is his junior year, and his sophomore year was his second worst. So he did have a drop off. He had 17.2 in his 2010-2011 season. So there was a little bit of a drop off in those 2 years, but nothing that's really relevant, especially when you're still young. But 2014, 2015 is going to be, in how I did this, his third worst year. Obviously, I said I skipped his like fourth year in the league or whatever because it was just a little bit better than the previous ones. But his third worst is 20.1 points per game. And even that 20.1 is very, very good, but it's nothing compared to his 28 points per game. And I'm going to grab this real quick for you guys. I'm going to be talking about his teammates. Actually, no, we're tell you what, we're going to go to when does he do well? What the reason why he does well is, and it might actually surprise you. So some of you guys might be saying the coaches. He's had some great coaches. And maybe some of you guys are saying the bench, some of the bench or the defense or maybe a certain position. And that last person that might be saying the position is the one that's on the right track. Because let's look at coaches. Okay, so he's had Billy Donovan this year. He's had Greg Popovich with the Spurs. And I think he had a couple with the Raptors. Okay, so let me point something out. Greg Popovich, one of the best coaches of all time, coached DeMar DeRozan when he was with the Spurs, obviously, for those 3 years. And that's when DeMar averaged about his middle area for points per game. Okay. So his best coach couldn't coach him to his best points per game. So is it really his coach? I don't think so. So now let's look at his bench. Everywhere you go, his bench has been about average. I mean, the Spurs didn't have a great bench. The Raptors didn't have a great bench. I'd say his best bench was with the Raptors. In his later years, I mean, you had Fred VanVleet when he was very young. You had Pascal when he was young. Serge Ibaka, Jonas Valanciunas. I think Valanciunas was a starter at that point. But you had a lot of good bench with the Raptors, but the Raptors weren't his best points per game. So if it's not the bench, I mean, you look at this year, the Chicago Bulls bench isn't great. The bench is pretty good defensively with Ayo Dosunmu and Alex Caruso, depending on what point in the year. Okay, so maybe he's a defense? Well, he's been on some pretty good defensive teams. I mean, the Spurs had Aldridge, and with the Raptors, you had Kyle Lowry, which is one of the best defensive point guards. But then you look at the Bulls this year, and a lot of injuries have made it so that their defense isn't phenomenal. I mean, early in the year, they were top 10 defensively, but with Caruso and Lonzo Ball and Patrick Williams all getting hurt, they have been bottom of the league portion, like the second half of the league. So it's not defense. So it's probably a position that he plays with on the starting, right? So DeMar DeRozan pretty much plays anything from shooting guard to power forward and small forward. Lately, he's been a power forward. I'd say for the most part, though, he's normally a small forward with P. Will or Green or something at that power forward. Okay. So that leaves point guard, shooting guard, power forward, center as who in those four is most important for DeMar's success. Okay, let's look at the point guard. So we had Kyle Lowry, who was an all-star pretty consistently. He had Devontae Murray on the Spurs, who is now an all-star and was pretty good with him there. Okay, and now he has, well, at point guard, really no one consistently with Lonzo Ball getting hurt and then Caruso getting hurt and Ayo Dosunmu, who's been playing very good, especially for a rookie, but nothing too consistent for point guard. So, well, maybe shooting guard, right? Well, the Raptors really have never had a great shooting guard while DeMar was there. Fred VanVleet, maybe. I'm sure I'm missing some people, but okay, so the Spurs didn't really either, okay, but the Bulls had Zach LaVine, right? But okay, so maybe that's why he's doing good this year, but why was he doing good earlier with the Raptors? Okay. So if DeMar is assumingly the small forward, who was his power forward a lot of times? Well, depending on your scheme, Valanciunas or Serge Ibaka or Aldridge with the Spurs, and this year it's been kind of all over the place with the Bulls. Well, how about centers? Okay, maybe we're on some with centers. Nikola Vucevic, right? Pretty good. He had Chris Bosh really early in his career. Okay. If LaMarcus Aldridge is arguably the 4, maybe sometimes the 5, there you go, Aldridge. And let me look at her name because I'm going to say it wrong. Bargnani. Yeah, Bargnani, who was with the Raptors. A pretty good forward slash center, depending on the point. And early in his career, he was averaging about 20 when he was with DeRozan. Okay, so maybe we're on something with that. But let's round back to the guards, okay? So he had pretty good point guards with the Raptors and Spurs. Now he has a pretty good, I'm just saying pretty good just to not be biased, shooting guard with Zach LaVine. So maybe his guards. So now we're down to guards versus centers. He's not really had a lot of support with forwards, but LaMarcus Aldridge is arguably on his position. So what is it? Let me tell you what it is. Let me tell you what I think it is, and then I'll back it up with stats. Okay. So guard, he has Kyle Lowry and Murray, and Murray's now All-Star. Kyle Lowry was an All-Star, and Zach LaVine is an All-Star. Okay. And let me tell you something that's important with all these guys. Not only can they go score, Kyle Lowry probably the worst scorer in these. Okay. So if Kyle Lowry's the worst scorer, and Kyle Lowry's not a top-tier scorer, then is it scoring? Debatable. Okay, Kyle Lowry and DeJounte Murray are very, very good defensive players, but Zach LaVine really isn't, if we're all being honest with ourselves. So if it's not defense, okay, well Zach LaVine's super athletic. Is it that? Well, Kyle Lowry's not really athletic. But you know what all of them are? They're good shooters. They're good three-point shooters. Kyle Lowry's about 40%. Zach LaVine's over 40. Zach LaVine's been in the three-point contest 2 times. DeJounte Murray he's pretty good this year, recently, and he was pretty darn good with the Spurs when Demar was there. So a shooting guard and a guard that can score, right? Because it's not defense, because Zach LaVine really isn't defensive heavy. It's not really passing, because Zach LaVine isn't super passing heavy, and Murray really wasn't when he was there. And it's not scoring, because Kyle Lowry's not super great at scoring. Okay, so it's shooting as a guard, spacing the floor, which, that makes sense, right? Because DeMar DeRozan is great at mid-range. We talked about this, right? Okay, but now I brought up the center and the power forward, the post in general. Let's say that. Okay, so who are some great scorers? We're not going to count Chris Bosh because he was only there for his very, very early season career. So, who else did he have? Marcus Aldridge, a very good scorer, and pretty good rebounder, right? Obviously. He also had Jonas Valanciunas, which, pretty good three-point shooter. Did that pique your interest, three-point shooting? I mean, we talked about it with guards. And an all-star caliber player now. Okay. LaMarcus Aldridge obviously was an all-star capable or already all-star when he was with DeMar. And now we look at the Bulls. Nikola Vucevic, a very good three-point shooter and all-star caliber. He was last year, and I'd say the reason why he isn't this year is because DeMar is there. So, it seems, outside of LaMarcus Aldridge, who is still a pretty decent shooter, that shooting is pretty important for his better years when he had Vucevic now and Valanciunas early on. And an all-star capable, even if he wasn't when he was with them, but capable, big man. Okay. And an all-star capable guard who can shoot. So shooting and an all-star capable at the smaller area and the bigger area. And then the other two don't really matter a whole lot. But, okay, I think we're on to something, right? And we're going to come back to that real quick. We're going to go to this sheet, which I would put on the screen, like paste it on the screen, but my handwriting is terrible. So what I did is I did the teams, I did the years, I did players with 10 plus points per game, players with 15 plus points per game, players with 20 plus points per game, and then his all-star teammates, and was the team above 500. So let's go year by year real quick. Rookie year, he had below 10. So we're going to skip his rookie year because it's not super important. But he had an all-star in Chris Bosh. Okay. Year 2, DeMar DeRozan averaging above 15. and he has a low post. And Bargnani scoring above 20 points per game. But he does not make the All-Star. And they do not go above 500. Okay. And now year 3, 11, 12, which was his worst points per game year. He has him and Bargnani at 15 plus and no one above 20 plus. Okay. So he has a bad scoring year when he doesn't have someone that's scoring above 20 or an all-star on his team. Okay, that's interesting. That matches up with what I said earlier, right? Okay. Now 12-13, it's DeRozan and Rudy Gay, and again, no one has scored 20 plus, and no one is an all-star, and he had a lower tier scoring year that year. Okay. And then the next year, Kyle Lowry has 15 plus, and Rudy Gay has 15 plus. So there's your big man and your guard who can score and who are capable, and DeMar DeRozan has 20 plus, and DeMar DeRozan is an all-star, and they're above 500 winning. Okay. So we're still matching up with what I'm saying, right? Well, let me further back this up now. The 2014-15 season, we have Williams and Lowry scoring 15 plus, and DeMar. And, the weird thing is Kyle Lowry makes the All-Star and DeMar doesn't. But they're above 500. So you have an all-star capable guard. And you have a bigger man who can score. Okay, and they go above 500. Okay, so now we have 2015-16 season. And they go above 500. But it's just DeMar and Lowry who are scoring above 15. They actually score above 20, but no one else scores above 15. And they're both all-stars. Okay, that's interesting, and that's good to know. And the next year, the same thing happens. DeMar and Lowry are 20 plus, no one 15 plus, and they both make All-Star, and they're above 500. Okay, and both of these years are some of DeMar's best scoring with 27.3 and 23.5 respectively. So you have your guard who's all-star capable and who is an all-star, but you don't have that post, so you're not scoring great. So where's the post? Okay, 17-18 season, it's DeMar above 20 and Lowry above 15. They both make all-star, but it's kind of just a subpar scoring year for DeMar. Interesting. They still go above 500. And then the next year, which is DeMar's last year with the Raptors. Oh, wait. Sorry. I already did that. 17-18, Lowry above 15 and DeMar above 20. They both make All-Star. Now, his first year with the Spurs, we have DeMar above 20 and LaMarcus Aldridge above 20. And DeMar did pretty good scoring. He's about middle ground, but he only has a big man that's scoring well. He doesn't have a top 15 scorer aside from his big man in Aldridge. Okay. And he that's middle ground of his scoring, right? Okay, and then the next year it's Aldridge scoring 15 plus and DeMar scoring 20 plus, and there's no all-stars, and again it's middle scoring because he doesn't have a big primary guard. And then his 2020-21 season, it's Murray and White scoring 15 plus and DeMar with 20 plus and no all-stars, and they go below 500 because he doesn't have a great big man scoring, but he has his guards. Okay. So we've noticed something. When DeMar has one, he's about average. When he has one, he doesn't always make the All-Star. Okay. And when he has a guard that's able, but not a post, they don't always make the above 500. But when he has a big man and not a post, at least in his later years, because his early years, then he also doesn't always make it because he had Bargnani and they didn't go above 500. But he didn't have a guard at that point. And lastly, in the Chicago Bulls, sorry about a lot of stats, but it really just solidifies my point. With the Bulls, Vucevic, center, above 15. Zach LaVine, above 20, guard. Demar and LaVine, both all-stars. Vucevic was an all-star the year prior, and they're above 500. And it's DeMar's best year scoring. So now he has a center and a guard who are all-star capable, which he's really never had consistently before. Okay. And they can both shoot, which he didn't really have with Aldridge. And okay. So everything's lining up with what I said, right? But does that mean I'm correct? Well, that's debatable. I mean, it could just be an outlier season where he's just finding a way to score just cuz. But it seems pretty consistent that when he has both, he does well. And when he has one, he does decent. Okay. Let's think, right? Let's think. So when he just has Aldridge, he is about middle. When he just has Lowry, he's about middle. Okay? And when he had Lowry and Williams in his 15-16 season, he's above his middle. And when he has Vucevic and Zach LaVine, he's well above his middle. So I think I've proven my point. It's DeMar does well when he has shooting, scoring capable guard and a shooting, rebounding capable center, who are both all-star caliber, who can both shoot, who can spread the floor, who can allow DeMar to go mid-range. And that's my final remarks. DeMar DeRozan this year has proved everyone wrong because what the Bulls already had set up roster. Now, obviously, DeMar is good enough where he's not doing good only because of who he has around him. He's doing good because who he has around him, but not only because of that. And that's important. But if you were confused or you were like Bleacher Report and you expected the worst, I think that's why it's been the best. Because of the roster, because who he's with, and because he is still a top forward in this league. And he just didn't have the pieces at the time with the Spurs, who were pretty much in a rebuild without being in a rebuild. Even though they were making playoffs, they were always in that low spot. I mean, the year they missed, they were the 11th seed, but one year when they made it, they were the 10th because of the play-in. Okay, so my final remarks are, I may not be right, but I think I've come up with a pretty good reason why. So, if you agree, go ahead and comment below. Thank you for tuning in this long. I hope I didn't ramble too long. I expected the video to go pretty long, but I feel like I almost repeated myself a lot. Sorry if I did that. But the best way to tell me if I did a good job at proving my point or not is with that like and dislike button. And the best way to prove that I did really good is to hit that subscribe button. And the best way to prove that I did not really good, probably to comment it. Now, me reading that, I'm not going to feel so great, but I'm able to improve with your guys' criticisms. So if you guys could leave some criticisms, I'd really appreciate that, good or bad. I really want to improve. This is something that I'm actually very passionate about and I really enjoy. So I'm probably going to leave a sports basketball. There's my cat in the background. You see something out the window. I'm going to leave a basketball video for you to click on up here. Go ahead and listen to my comments on more basketball. If you're a basketball fan, I have hockey comments too. If you want to go click on some hockey, I'm doing a huge playlist of the Vegas and their inaugural season, and it's by far my favorite video I've ever done. There's 3 parts so far. There's going to be one more part on why I think other first-year teams aren't as great. I also have some football. I'm going to have some coming out about the draft here soon and free agency and all that stuff. So, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it if you watch this long. Again, my name is John. This is The Sports Advocate. Thank you so much for watching. And if you've already seen this outro, say it with me now. Okay? I hope I taught you guys something. I hope I made you smile. I hope I made you laugh. And you guys be safe out there.